Hello. Uh, why am I here tonight? Well, tonight I'm reviewing a documentary I watched on Monday. Yes, Monday was. At the behest, at the suggestion of a radio show I like called The Bonfire. Um, they started talking about this documentary that was released last Sunday called Woodstock 99 Peace, Love, and Rage. I believe that's the name of it. Um, as the title suggests, it is about Woodstock, the Woodstock that took place in the year 1999, which is widely remembered as one of the biggest disasters in music festival history. Though not the biggest, I think Firefest probably takes the cake as just the most outright disaster. But I could be wrong. But well, Woodstock 99, it is a special thing because it always stood out in my mind as just one of the biggest fuck ups in terms of music festivals. Because I was like 14 when that happened, and I just remember seeing it and hearing about it on TV and just seeing what a fucking shit show the whole thing was, and just be like, man, I'm glad I didn't go to that. But as for the documentary itself, it's pretty good. It covers really all the details about what happened at Woodstock 99 and really gets into the history of the Woodstock Festival itself. For a little bit of backstory, that was the third Woodstock Festival to occur in 30 years. The first took place in 1969 on a farm in Bethel, New York. It was originally supposed to take place in Woodstock, New York, but the venue fell through, so they had to reorganize it to Bethel. By that point, they'd already advertised it as Woodstock, so they just said, fuck it, we'll just call it Woodstock, even though it's not taking place in Woodstock. So it took place in Bethel. Then, the one organizer they keep mentioning who was there for all of them was this guy called Michael Lang. He was there for the original one when he was much younger, and then I don't know if the other three guys who were with him for the first one also were there for the second. I have no idea, but I know that Lang had a hand in the one that took place 25 years later for Woodstock 94. This one took place in Saugerties, New York, which actually isn't that far from where I live. Big open area, a lot of open space, so good place for an outside music festival. The first Woodstock was a 3-day music festival. The second one was a 2-day. The second one in '94 was a 2-day music festival. Just the 2 days over the weekend, I guess Saturday and Sunday. Or maybe Friday and Saturday, I don't know for sure. But that one went over pretty well. The first one gets painted with rose-colored glasses a little bit. You know how we like to look at the past and act like everything was so fucking okay? And you know how the baby boomers like to talk about how their fucking teenage years and their past was fucking great and everything was perfect and it was the perfect way to live and all that fucking shit, when all they did was bitch and complain and fucking want to change the world, just like the youth of today or the youth of every other fucking generation. But they still like to pretend like everything was perfect back then. It's like, yeah, that's why you all fucking did drugs and acted like assholes, because everything was fucking fine. You weren't trying to escape something. But there was problems at the original Woodstock. There were small riots. There were acts of violence. I think there was even a few deaths. So it's just like, it wasn't perfect. 94 didn't seem to have any real problems because it was probably shorter, and also because the weather cooperated. It rained a lot, so it kept things cool, and the worst thing was just mud, but everybody seemed to be having fun with mud. They were mud sliding and throwing mud around and shit. Well, they decided, since that one went over so well, that they would get together and do it again 5 years later. I believe one of the organizers for 94 and 99, besides Michael Lang, was this guy called John Shear. John Shear, sure. How do you spell his name? I think it's John Shear. He features prominently in this documentary because he is a fucking asshole. This time in 99, they held it in Rome, New York. And the funny thing about Rome is Rome was desperately in need of money, and so they were looking for anything to try to make them some money. So they decided to hold this festival, and they basically rented out a now abandoned military base. So keep in mind, something that was inspired by the 1960s era, anti-war, anti-military, peace, love, and drugs, fucking hippie idealism. That's what Woodstock was always presented as, was now going to be taking place at a fucking Air Force base. And now this time is going to be held over 4 days. Technically 3. The main show starts on Friday, but they had a pre-show that was starting on Thursday that if you came early, you could attend. That was going to be on Thursday. And basically the thing was going to be open for mostly like 24 hours. Like, the main stages would just perform during most of the day, but then overnight they had like other things. They had like a 24-hour film festival going on. They had an emerging artist tent, which is basically the DJ tent, where they just had people that would be open all night, where they just had DJs doing sets and fucking everybody taking drugs and everything. They were confiscating people's food and water at the door, but they were still letting them come in with drugs. They had a fucking horribly trained, don't give a shit security. Now here's something that I can relate to. As someone who's been a security guard, I can relate to how not involved and do not give a fuck the attitude of the security guards was. They made a point to mention that it's like they only took like a 3-hour class. It's like, well, for starters, I don't know where they were taking that class, because I've gotten a security license. The initial security license class is 16 hours, and then you have to take an 8-hour class every year to keep your license renewed. And it's way too long of a class. It is the most mind-numbingly boring thing. And here's another little fucking factoid. Nobody actually stays for the full 8 hours. No class is held for the full 8 hours, because there's nothing to teach. It's like, well, so they were only there for 3 hours. What could they teach them? There's nothing to teach about being a security guard. You know what one of the first things they tell you about being a security guard is? They tell you that they can't tell you what your job is going to be, because your authority and the extent of what you'll be in charge of and what you'll be responsible for will be dictated to you by whoever you work for. So they're literally telling you that there's literally nothing to fucking teach in a security class, in a security guard class, because what are they supposed to teach you? It's not like being a cop where, you're essentially doing the same thing wherever. A security guard could be doing wildly different things. Some security guards are armed and take a way more active role. Some security guards just sit in a room and watch fucking cameras all night. That's it. Technically, it's the same job, but they're doing vastly different things. But these guys obviously didn't give a shit, because who gives a shit? It's a security guard. Nobody fucking cares. But yeah, I brought up the one guy, John Schur, before, because this motherfucker, 20 years later, they talked to him 20 years later, and he still takes no fucking responsibility for everything that went wrong there. The fucking greed that made, that had them order their security guards to throw and confiscate anybody's food or water, so they had to buy it inside. And then you get inside and everything's ridiculously expensive. They're selling bottles of water for $4 a fucking bottle. And then they go, well, people didn't have to buy them. We had water fountains. And then they mention that people were bathing in the water fountains because they didn't want to use the fucking communal shower area. And it was just like, Jesus Christ. It's like, so then people are like, well, now I don't have, access to water. And the water also costs the same as beer, so some people just chose beer, which actually dehydrates you more. Oh, and let's not forget that particular weekend, it was like 100 fucking degrees. And they're on a military base, which is basically just blacktop fucking pavement. So there's literally no coverage, and they're just walking around on fucking blacktop and just fucking burning to death. So you had people walking around completely naked, not to show off, because it was so hot. That was the only way to stay relatively cool. And we'll get to that, the problems that causes later on. So it was all this fucking greed fueling fucking problems right away. Then, like I said, you had people walking around naked, particularly a lot of women walking around naked and being topless, so there was a lot of guys just, well, you get ogling them if a woman's walking around naked. You just kind of got to expect that. But there were a lot of guys touching women, groping women, molesting women. Some women even got fucking straight up raped. So that was pretty bad. And then, of course, the whole thing eventually, by the fourth night, just evolves into complete and total hell. I mean, just a riot happens, and they just start destroying and burning everything. And still, 20 years later, this John Schur guy takes no fucking responsibility. He blames everybody else. He blames Fred Durst for the riot. He blames MTV for the bad press. And he blames the women who got raped for getting raped. I'm not making this up. He straight up says in the documentary that he at least partially blames them for being sexually assaulted because they were walking around topless. Keep in mind, during '69, where I'm sure someone still got assaulted and shit, there were plenty of hippie chicks walking around probably completely fucking naked. Definitely with their titties out. It's just like, it's insane. It's insane. And they said that probably the number of sexual assaults went underreported because a lot of women were just like, after something happened to them, they're like, well, who am I going to complain to? I'm sitting in fucking chaos. I think the numbers they said that there was like at least one staff member for like every 35 people. So and like they just showed how these guys had like press meetings every day, and how people started criticizing them for the lack of safety, and like there was garbage everywhere. It was just so ill run. And like I said, that John Schur guy takes no fucking responsibility. But it wasn't all his fault, mind you. There's also the just the audience that fucking festival attract. Unlike '69, which had this very eclectic audience, and it brought out, hippie and rock and roll people, and '94 seemed a little bit more chaotic, but still kind of chill. But by '99, you just had this really angry group of fucking macho, dude bro white guys, fucking alpha dick faces who just cause problems everywhere they go. And they weren't there to see a lot of the acts. Like, it's funny they mentioned how um you know, they only had 3 female acts for like the entire festival, and they had at least one of them every, like, on every day. Like, I think like Sheryl Crow performed on Friday, and Alanis Morissette performed on Saturday, and then Jewel came out on Sunday. It's like nobody, no, none of the fucking audience for this thing is there for these 3. And then but you had a lot of that shit going on. But they were there for like the new metal bands, like fucking Limp Bizkit and fucking Korn, fucking Rage Against the Machine and shit. That fucking real aggressive, angry music. That was a thing that was going on in the 90s. There was a weird turn in the late 90s of a lot of young dudes who were just angry for no reason, and the world was just not what they wanted, and they were just pissed off for no discernible reason. And, you know, they're probably still around today, and they're probably still up to no fucking good. I mean, this whole documentary just takes shots at white dudes the whole time. It basically blames white guys for everything that went wrong here. And in this situation, they're not fucking wrong. You know, white guys really fucked this one up. I also like how they blame, like, the anger of these guys. Like, one of the reasons they say it's like, well, because they were all upset over Kurt Cobain killing himself. It's like, dude, that was like 6 years before this. I doubt anybody even remembered or was thinking of him that much. It's like, you know, if that was the case, then why didn't it affect 94 at all? You know, which his death would still be relatively fresh there. It's just, it doesn't make a whole fucking lot of sense. I'll tell you one person who it does come off as a douchebag in this documentary, besides that John Schur guy, is Moby. I mean, he comes off as a straight up whiny little bitch. I mean, overlooking his fucking douchey tattoos, he's like, he just starts, you know, he gets into the fucking white guy thing, and then he complains that his name isn't on the fucking banners with everybody else's, and, you know, it's like, well, that's because you're not performing on either of the main stages. You're performing in the fucking upcoming artist / you know, house music drug tent. It's like, nobody wants to fucking hang out there, dude. Oh. What was he saying? Oh yeah, Moby's a dildo. He just blames everybody, and he was just butthurt that his name wasn't on a fucking banner with everybody else's. It's like, no, dude, you're performing in the drug tent. Nobody cares how famous you are. Oh yeah, and they had these 2 stages, the East and West stage, where acts were performing at the same time, but they were like a mile apart, so it was no possible way to go from one band to another. It was insane. Then the anger comes to a head during the Limp Bizkit set on Saturday, and Fred Durst starts singing his hit song "Break Shit," and people start breaking shit, and he just goes along with it, and they got angry at him for that. I'm like, well, what did you expect? Why did you invite him here? And then they still blame him for the riot takes place. Keep in mind, the riot doesn't take place till Sunday night. He performed on Saturday night. So they're blaming him for something that happens a completely day later, because during some of the last performances, some groups started handing out candles, and people started setting fires with them. Keep in mind, they'd already broken down a wall and shit earlier that day, because overnight on Saturday they got in their head to just start, fucking destroying everything. But to blame Fred Durst for that entire riot is just fucking stupid. But yeah. I keep forgetting what I'm saying. Shit. The whole thing was just a disaster. In fact, in the documentary, well, they have Moby. They also have these two fucking reporters. They have like a female reporter who's trying to push like this whole men are evil thing, and then actually in that situation, dude's kind of taking L because there was a lot of fucking bad shit that happened there, and it's really nothing else to blame other than the fucking horrible I shouldn't have chosen that word. Just the horrible fucking conditions of fucking men. And then at one point they try to force a racial argument talking about how like, oh, you know how white people like to, there's a black reporter, he's like, oh, you know how white people like to, take from black people and just change everything around to the way it suits them. It's like, oh yeah, improvising. Why should nobody do that? And but he tries to force a racial argument because DMX performs at one point, and he sings a song where the N-word features heavily, and then he starts leaving his mic to the audience to get them to sing back to him. So they start singing the song, they start rapping the song, including the N-word part, and they're just like, whoa, I mean, what if they were there with a black friend, and their friend might be looking and go, oh, I didn't know he would say this. It's like, you didn't know he would repeat DMX's song back to him? It's like... yeah, they got angry because people rapped a song back to DMX at his own suggestion. Like, if he had held up the mic and nobody said anything, he'd have been more pissed than if you called him the N-word to his face, I bet. Just fucking insane that they tried to force that fucking racial argument. Like, oh, like, what if the guy was like, oh, I didn't think he would say this type of word. It's like, really? Oh, shit. But yeah, this is just a lot of stupid people. Nobody was taking responsibility for anything. I mean, they even tell a story about a guy who fucking died. There were people who were just passing out from hypothermia, and one of them fucking just straight up died. The only people that come off good that talk in this documentary, and there's not a lot because not a lot of the artists who were there actually spoke, but two that did were Jonathan Davis and Dave Mustaine, who came off as the least dildo-y of the whole group. Although Dave Mustaine looks like he's fucking aging terribly. Guy can't be that old, and he looks like he's fucking 84. Oh God, I'm so tired. Let's see. What else happened? So yeah, by the end of the night, a fucking riot broke out. They started fires, they broke shit, they had to call the fire department, they had to call the sheriff's department. And still, it didn't. Oddly enough, it didn't shut anything down. They tried. The funny thing is, like, while the fires were raging, they were raging like near where the Red Hot Chili Peppers were performing, and they were like went to Anthony Kiedis and were like, "Can you do something to calm the audience down with like an encore or something?" And so he comes up and sings Jimi Hendrix's "Fire." It was just like, all right, I guess it's a fitting song, but at the same time, it's like, what did you expect him to do? He's a singer. He can't just bring peace to the situation. Oh God. But yeah, the whole thing was a fucking shit show. The whole goddamn thing was just a fucking shit show. And I love that guy, John, sure doesn't fucking take any fucking responsibility. Whatso fucking ever. MTV MTV had people there, but they were so wildly hated because they kept showing pop, because I guess guys were angry that they're showing pop music. It's like, I get not liking pop music, but then fucking, just don't fucking watch it then. They were angry because it was like, oh, they're just promoting like kid music and fucking shit. It's just like, yeah, that's what MTV eventually became, and then, the music aspect of it pretty much disappeared. But shit happens. Is that what I'm saying about a fucking event that ended in fires after molestations and rapes and shit? People dying? One of the things about this documentary is nobody can seem to decide what it's about, because they keep going all over the place. It's angry white guys, and then it's a culture of fucking greed, and then it's, the fucking temperature, and Kurt Cobain dying, and it's all over the place, and nobody seems to come to a fucking real consensus on what the fuck happened, what went so fucking wrong. All the musicians keep talking about how, like, right away they were like, I could just feel that something was off, that this wasn't the right place to be, and yet they were all there. Ugh. Fuck them. Ugh, what a bunch of idiots. But, I'm trying to think if there's anything more to talk about, but it's just like, it was a good documentary in the way it was made, but it was bad in that nobody comes to quite the conclusion of what went wrong. It just seemed like it was the wrong thing in the wrong place in the wrong time. Everything about it was just, like, everything and nothing about it was just wrong. But I guess that everything was enough to just fuck their entire world up, at least for a fucking weekend. Oh shit. So yeah, whatever I'm trying to say. Woodstock 99 is an okay documentary. I give it 1 thumb up. It gets into some interesting things, but for the most part, you just come away with no more knowledge than you did before, I mean, of course, everybody heard of 99, but, The rest should knock you off with the vintage Jacks. Though the funny thing, even after that disaster, they still tried to hold Woodstock 50 in 2019, and it got canceled just months before it was supposed to happen. It also led to one of my favorite news headlines ever, where they said that Jay-Z and John Fogerty were both dropping out of it. And I'm just like, the very idea that Jay-Z and John Fogerty were going to perform at the same place was funny to me. But that fell apart. And I know at least Michael Lang was one of the organizers for that. It's an interesting idea, but it's an idea that's had its time. I also like how the documentary makers felt the need to throw one last little dig in, and they show how not Lollapalooza. What was I talking about? This fucking dog who... I don't know. Yeah, Woodstock 99. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm forgetting. I don't think so. Woodstock 99, good documentary. Did I already give it one thumb up? I'm changing my mind already. I'm giving it 2 thumbs up. I highly recommend you watch it. It's an interesting little piece of history. Oh, I also like how they went around and they were just blaming the culture at the time. They were blaming fucking violent music and violent movies and violent TV shows. I love how the fucking liberals nowadays have just circled completely back around and just become 90s era conservatives. It's just like it's everyone else's responsibility that you're violent. There's something wrong with you. You know, it's the movies and the TV shows and the music. That's what's to blame. It's like, what? What are you arguing here? And on whose behalf? It's insane. Oh my god. But yeah. Oh my god. But yeah. It's so fucking dumb. That whole thing was so fucking dumb. Oh shit. Oh my god, I'm so tired. Yeah. It's a decent documentary. I recommend it. Little piece of American history, the late 90s, where the change was happening in politics and culture, and people were angry and they didn't know why, and everything was confusing, and oh, sad time to be alive, man. Okay, it's time for bed. This has gone on too long. Woodstock 99. Watch it. It's an interesting documentary. It gives you a little look at the late 90s and the fucking, gives you a little hint of the changes that were coming in the 2000s that just fucking took off into the fucking nightmare we live nowadays. But it's not like the 90s were super better. That's that rose-colored glasses shit we all do, looking back on our childhood. Oh, things seem so much better when I was a kid. Yeah, that's because you were a kid. You had no responsibility for the world, and you have no idea how much easier and better that fucking seems. But yeah, Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, and Rage. Good documentary. I highly recommend it. Very interesting.